Alpha Omega, Part 4. As I have said, the Alpha strategy and the Omega strategy are both ego-based efforts or tendencies. Each is the basis for religious, intellectual, and social conventions that provide a degree of order and purpose in various times and places. However, those systems of order and purpose are not identical to truth. They are schemes conceived by humankind in the search for truth. And each such system is limited by egoity, manifesting as emotional self-contraction, false intellectual views grounded in doubt and fear, and physical limitations determined by the specifically limited human brain and body in the conditional environment of Earth. This world of Earth is not merely a physical world made by God. This world of Earth, like all conditional worlds, is a psychophysical world that inheres in reality itself and truth itself, which is the only real causal God. Reality itself, or truth itself, or real causal God, is not the necessary, direct, or purposive course of all conditional events. Reality itself, or truth itself, or real causal God, is the ultimate and inherently perfect and perfectly subjective self-nature, self-condition, source condition, and self-state. The self-nature, self-condition, source condition, and self-state in which all events, or every cause and every effect arise, change, and disappear. Even every effect and every conditional being is functioning as a creative cause in this world. Therefore, every effect and every conditional being and every creative cause plays upon or is an apparent modification of reality itself, or truth itself, or real causal God. But only those effects, conditional beings, and creative causes that are utterly surrendered or yield and aligned to reality itself, or truth itself, or real causal God, can, by means of transcendental spiritual infusion of the self-existing divine self-radiance, be made to function as transparent means for the divinely self-realized demonstration of reality itself, or truth itself, or real causal God within the cosmic domain. And in order that this yielding and aligning and divine transcendental spiritual infusion and divinely self-realized demonstration be reality and truly and really divinely made possible for all and all, and, in the case of all and all, be really and truly and really divinely made to be the case. I am divinely avatarically born by means of my great divine avataric descent into the total cosmic domain. Reality itself, or truth itself, or real causal God, simply stands eternally free. The relationship between the non-conditional reality, or the transcendental, inherently spiritual, intrinsically egoless, perfectly causal, and self-evidently divine reality, and the conditional reality, and, therefore, any and every conditionally manifested being is, inherently, a mystery constantly revealed and constantly concealed by its own complete and constant evidence. That inherent and inherently perfect mystery is made evident in every detail of conditional existence, but the all-revealing secret of the great truth of that mystery is perfectly and inherently obvious only when consciousness itself participates in the great sacrifice of every detail of conditional existence. Apart from the process of such self-sacrifice, it is not possible to truly identify and thereby to truly accept or embrace the signs of reality itself, or truth itself, or real A Course of God. And until by means of my avatarically self-transmitted divine transcendental spiritual grace, there is inherent and inherently most perfect and utterly ego-transcending and fully and most perfectly transcendentally spiritually awakened real God realization, a conditional being, effect, or cause is only potentially divine. And even whatever condition or conditional being or conditional state of being is most ultimately divinely transfigured and divinely transformed by my self-existing divine self-radiance, is also utterly outshined in divine translation into the sphere and space and substance of my bright divine self-domain. All conditional effects and beings and causes are acting and reacting in a great symmetrical plastic that mysteriously commands both order and disorder, such that no ultimate order, goal, or final conditional fulfillment is ever attained. The conditional worlds and beings are not an end in themselves. They only seem to be an end to themselves. Therefore, all conditional beings are called by me to always grow beyond and to always go beyond, through ego-transcending and world-transcending devotional recognition response to me. The conditional cosmos is not a moral universe in the conventional sense. There is no absolute, final, and objectively sufficient system of social imperatives or laws of public and private morality. Right and ego-transcending action is necessary, but it must be generated intelligently and ultimately on the basis of the self-sacrificial or ego-transcending motive of whole bodily or total psychophysical devotional communion with me, rather than merely on the basis of an abstract or independent order of cosmic nature or human society. Neither the alpha morality of strategically pursued escape through the passive enactment of virtues and duties, nor the omega morality of creative change through aggressive efforts toward conditional goals, is a principle founded on truth. Alpha and omega are simply the conventional basis for social morality, public order, popular culture, and egoic struggle. The great principle to be realized is ego-transcending devotional communion with me, in my avatarically self-revealed transcendental, perfectly subjective, inherently spiritual, intrinsically egoless, inherently perfect, perfectly acoursal, and self-evidently divine person. With ego-transcending devotional communion with me is expressed in the course of practice in the only by me revealed and given reality way of Adidam, culminating in the only by me revealed and given seventh stage of life. Therefore, true or right morality is, in truth, the morality of ego-transcending devotional communion to me, the what and the who that is reality itself, or that which is always already the case. The reality way is not about safety or the salvation of the individual from naked confrontation with suffering and pleasure and death and love. The reality way is about the perfect transcending of human existence, individually and collectively. Therefore, my each and every devotee must awaken from the ego-protecting illusions of religious safety, and on the basis of that awakening, turn to me instead. One and all must, by consistent, right and radical, or always at the root, and thus truly ego-surrendering, ego-forgetting, and ego-transcending devotion to me, be whole bodily, or in a total psychophysical manner, yield into my avatarically self-transmitted, divine, transcendental spiritual presence of love bliss, in which the body and the mind are to be swimming forever. There is no holy substitute. There is no true and effective representative sacrifice. There is no right and true alternative to intrinsically egoless, self-awakened consciousness and perfectly egoless love bliss. In the case of the every individual, therefore, every one is the necessary sacrifice of real God in real God. The conditional psychophysical worlds are a great and universal, or everywhere required and enacted process of sacrifice. No conditional thing or being or world is an end in itself. Nevertheless, the universal sacrifice of all things and beings and worlds is a feast of love bliss and even a swoon of joy, if the principle of ego-transcending devotional communion with me is realized. Therefore, true or right morality is, in truth, the morality of universal self-sacrifice. And the right exercise of the morality of universal self-sacrifice is the self-sacrifice or the ego-transcending life process of self-surrender of the total psychophysical ego, in and by means of ego-surrendering, ego-forgetting, and directly and at last, most perfectly ego-transcending, and altogether whole bodily, or total psychophysical, and always devotionally me recognizing, and devotionally to me responding, devotional communion with me, in my divinely avatarically self-revealed human revelation form, and transcendental spiritual presence, and egoless reality state of self-evidently divine person. The morality of universal self-sacrifice is by means of my avatarically self-transmitted divine grace, founded on the understanding that the self-sacrifice or whole bodily self-surrender of egoity, and thus and thereby the transcending of the total psychophysical self, is devotionally me recognizing and devotionally to me responding, devotional communion with me, is itself the expression and the demonstration of reality itself and truth itself, whereas the motives of strategic escape and dominance are, at best, only a search for reality and truth. There is no absolute system of moral imperatives in this domain of universal sacrifice. There is no absolute order of laws in conditional nature. All of this is aligned towards self-sacrifice, going beyond, or the transcending of egoity, and thus toward realization of my divine bright spherical self-domain. The practice of the ultimate way of self-sacrifice, or of ego-transcending devotional communion with me, the avatarically self-revealed transcendental, inherently spiritual, intrinsically egoless, perfectly accursal, and self-evidently divine person, is individual and always in present time, and generally productive of harmony, or the order of balance and fearlessness, and even sometimes productive of relative disorder, where loveless order has suppressed the move of life, and always inherently free. in the free exercise of ego-transcending devotional communion with me, in the ever-changing context of conditional relations and events, the conventional moralities, both alpha and omega, are each, as a style of action, sometimes engaged in a dynamic and artfully managed play of application. But one who practices ego-transcending devotional communion with me in the ever-changing context of conditional relations and events always exceeds the limits of both alpha and omega. Actions in the mode of alpha, or virtues and duties, allow detachment, calm, even purity, orderliness, and desireless effectiveness. But alpha has no moral rule or effective means in situations of social chaos and human disorder that require creative and even aggressive action. And the alpha strategy in itself generally does not take the conditional dimension of reality sufficiently into account. Just so, actions in the mode of omega, or effective physical, emotional, and intellectual creativity, can achieve many individual and collective goals. But on its own, the omega strategy eventually leads to the exploitation, degradation, and suppression of the individual and of humankind, because the omega strategy is not based on a regard for the total necessity and obligation of the individual human being, especially the transcendental spiritual necessity and the obligation to transcend the conditional self in the yet ego-based context of the first six, or ego-based and merely developmental stages of life. Therefore, beyond and even in the midst of virtue, duty, and the creative or aggressive pursuit of goals of conditional change, there must, by means of my avatauti self-transmitted divine transcendental spiritual grace, be the constant reality way and practice of ego-transcending devotional communion with me, and in the context of necessarily ever-changing conditional reality. The conditional worlds are built upon and of the sacrifice of everything, event, process, or being that appears or exists conditionally. The conditional worlds are built upon sacrifice, not upon or for the purpose of the preservation, survival, conquest, or attainment of conditional reality. Therefore, senior to conventional morality, whether alpha or omega, is the ultimate and necessarily artful practice of sacrifice of the ego I, or conditional self, in reality itself, under all conditions, and in relations. For my devotees, that ultimate art involves a willingness to engage action always and only in the context and on the basis of intrinsically ego-transcending devotional communion with me, but variously in a dynamic fashion, sometimes in the alpha likeness, conservative, passive, even apparently detached and introverted, sometimes in the omega likeness, aggressive, even apparently attached and extroverted, and always without requiring one or the other or both of these two to account for the totality of human circumstance. Therefore, in this ultimate art, there is sometimes virtue, sometimes duty, sometimes passivity, detachment, or receptivity, sometimes creativity, passion, or aggressiveness. But there is always this self-sacrifice, or persistent in the ego-transcending devotional communion with me, the avatauti self-revealed transcendental, spiritual, in heavenly spiritual, intrinsically egoless, perfectly indivisible, perfectly accursal and self-evidently divine person, such that my divine love bliss radiance replaces the ego act of self-contraction. Conditional human existence is not merely a thing to be preserved and fulfilled, but it is a process to be fully understood and transcended. The conditional cosmos as a whole is not a fixed system of order, as if some final order were the goal of God, but rather the conventional cosmos is an open-ended theatre of sacrifice in real accursal God. Life is made of a little temporary order, a constant tendency toward change, and an ultimate and absolute demand for sacrifice. Therefore, all of this conditionally arising cosmic domain is a dynamic play of order